So I'm far from the most knowledgeable on The Witcher's lore, but I thoroughly enjoyed playing the hell out of the games, and the Netflix adaptation of the books was pretty fun. I've wanted to make a video about this world for a while, mainly because I just like maps. We actually don't have an official detailed map by the author of the book series, Andrzej Zabowski, but a bunch of people involved with the publishing and game releases have put out some interpretations based on the text, and I think they work almost as good. The entirety of the story takes place on a large chunk of landmass called the continent. Pretty funny how fantastical this world's setting is, and it all takes place on a continent simply called the continent. All we know is that this region is located on the northern hemisphere of the planet, and 90% of all land is actually on the northern hemisphere. The southern hemisphere is mostly just sea. Out west, beyond the Great Sea, lies another continent called, you guessed it, the Western Continent. I should probably clarify that it isn't actually that these names are unoriginal, more like the continents are unnamed in this primitive world. They haven't gotten that far yet. The Western Continent is also referred to as the New World, similar to how North America was called the same back when colonizers from Europe went out looking for new opportunity hundreds of years ago. And like the Europeans, characters sail off from their shores into the unknown. This location is pretty removed from the story. The Witcher begins with the powerful kingdom, Cintra. You know, where that mean Queen Calanthe ruled, Ciri's grandmother. They were under attack by the southern kingdom called Nilfgaard. The Nilfgaardian Empire is who that Black Knight was fighting for. They previously hadn't been much of a threat, but under their new emperor, they've gotten ambitious and have decided to go on a conquest. It's why that massive battle took place. Nilfgaard is located in the southern region of the continent. But after every victory over smaller kingdoms on the way to Cintra, they have absorbed each one of them into their own empire, making them provinces. Queen Calanthe was killed and Cintra was burned, making Nilfgaard the most powerful empire in history. Ever since the defeat of Cintra, the northern kingdoms have been more united in their hatred of the Nilfgaardian Empire. And there are a lot of kingdoms that comprise of the northern kingdoms, more than a dozen. That group of islands off to the west, near the coast of Cintra, is called Skellige, or the Skellige Isles. One of the kingdoms in the northern realms. These 6 islands within the Great Sea are mainly known for their pirates and their impressive longships that allow them to quickly travel around this world. Skellige didn't have the best relationship with the mainland northern kingdoms, until the marriage between Queen Calanthe and their own military leader, Eyst Tursich, Ciri's step-grandfather. Things were still rough with the other kingdoms, but at least now they had an ally in Cintra, since Eyst Tursich was now living there as the king beside Queen Calanthe. In between the Skellige Islands and the mainland is a mysterious phenomenon called the Sedna Abyss, or Sedna Trench. Sailors avoid this area in the waters, since many ships have disappeared in a sudden appearance of a whirlpool. It's believed this is where Ciri's parents disappeared when on their ship. It's why she was raised by her grandparents. Every kingdom north of Nilfgaard is considered part of the northern kingdoms on the continent. The Amel Mountains separate the north and south, but there are a bunch of passes that allow access between regions. While there are a bunch of small kingdoms in the northern realms, there are 4 powerhouses that rule over the larger sections of land here, called the 4 Kingdoms, or the Great Kingdoms. There's Redania, Temeria, Aedirn, and Kaer. Kaer, the largest of the 4, is a cold region with tons of forests. Redania is a wealthy place with the largest university. Their wealth comes from all grains grown here and exported throughout the continent. A notable location you'll remember well if you played Witcher 3 is Novigrad. It's a free city outside the rule of Redania monarchy, but still within its borders. It's the most populated city we know of in this story, with 30,000 living here, which doesn't really sound like much. This major port city has all types of businesses thriving. Tameria is one of the other 4 kingdoms, and like Redania, it's very wealthy, but mostly known for their military strength. There's a lot of money to be made with trading minerals, and Tameria has the Morhen Mountains, part of its kingdom, rich with valuable minerals. Their form of money, called the Temerian aedirn, or just the oren, is the most commonly used currency on the continent. Adrian is the youngest of the 4 kingdoms, and it's a peaceful place with farmland taking up a large portion of territory. I say peaceful because of the pleasant year-round climate. This is actually where Yennefer is originally from, the capital city, Vengerberg to be specific. It was here that Yen's powers manifested, and Tissaia found her. Traveling around this primitive world is usually done by horse or by foot, but if you're born with a natural affinity for magic, teleporting is the way to go. Tissaia takes Yennefer to the Isle of Thand, just off the coast of Tameria, to an acclaimed magic academy for girls called Aretuza. It was here that she learned how to control her abilities under Tsaya's wing. Aretuza is usually a place for upper-class society, but Tsaya made an exception for Yen because she saw something special in her, and her hunch was right. Trained mages often advise kings in the realms, including Nilfgaard. If you guys remember in the 3rd episode, when newly graduate mages from Aretuza were being paired up with kingdoms they would serve, Yen almost ended up with Nilfgaard, before she finessed her way into her homeland, Adrian, which was more desirable for her. Yennefer's elven ancestry was making it difficult for her to find a ruler that would take her in. Yen is a quarter elf, which means one of her grandparents were not human. It's a pretty big deal in the northern kingdoms, who look at other non-human species as lesser. Elves and other humanoid races like dwarves and gnomes were on this continent long before humans came around. A lot of these cities and structures were built up by elves. Humans just conquered this land with magic. A lot of elves still coexist with humans in their kingdoms, constantly dealing with their prejudice against them. But some have decided to live in the wild, completely secluded, in order to avoid humans. Within the Morhen mountain range of Tameria is a large community of dwarves, gnomes, and halflings that find refuge here away from humans. They actually serve a pretty vital role in all the northern kingdoms, since they mine and supply the realm with the highest quality iron. The dwarves may be fierce in battle, but it's the slimmer gnomes who forge unmatched weapons. So even though these two races are looked down upon, they are respected far more than elves, who are just treated like trash. The show tries to drive this point home with that elven boy Dara, who saves Ciri after she gets away from the Black Knight after Cintra is burned. This world's discrimination forces him to hide his ears, so others can't identify his race. These two entered the most mysterious and strange location in all the series, Brocklin Forest, a place humans call the Forest of Death. There's a lot to unpack here, but for some reason the show decided to rush through this part of the story with their questionable pacing. I wouldn't be surprised if most viewers were just left scratching their head after these scenes. I'll do my best to take care of that itch. What makes Brocklin Forest so unique are the people that inhabit it, a human-like species called dryads, who are exclusively female. Their skin is usually a greenish tone or brown and wear their hair in dreadlocks. The show decided to just have black women play the dryads, which is fine I guess, because some diversity in this Witcher world wouldn't hurt. The dwarves believe that the dryads were the first humanoid species on the continent. Dryads are the nature-loving people who despise anyone cutting down their forests. They used to be found all over the continent's untouched wild, but after humans showed up, their last stand has been Brocklin, and they've done a good job protecting it, proving to be very skilled warriors with their bows and magic. Their use of nature magic has helped them drive off colonizers, and kept this ancient forest the sole non-human realm in all the continent. Since dryads are only female, they have to have some decent communication with the other races if they are to reproduce, and they take mating very seriously. They choose ideal men and elves that will keep their lineage strong. All the dryads' offspring come out 100% dryad female, so some strong genes running through them. There's also one other way they keep their population going. Brocklin is a magical place, and a substance called the Water of Brocklin can actually transform any girl into a dryad. So they sometimes take young girls into their forest and make them drink this mutagen that turns females into them. It seems to also affect their memory of their past, but for some reason this water didn't work on Ciri. Her own magical genes must have interfered. Geralt also drinks this water. It would never be able to change him into a dryad because of his gender, but it did affect him very differently because he's a witcher. He had severe hallucinations, but once they passed, he was in full health. Geralt already has mutagens flowing through him because of the experiments done on him as a young child to become a witcher. If you ever wondered where our main guy Geralt of Rivia is from, well, you knew all along, it's in his name. Rivia is a small kingdom at the foot of the Morhen Mountains. The larger kingdoms look down upon the Rivians, calling them Rivs. For some reason they see them all as thieves. It's a hilly region mostly known for its quarrels and unions with their neighbor Lyria. As sometimes these two kingdoms have come together to form one larger one, just called Lyria and Rivia. But Geralt didn't spend much time in Rivia. His mother, Visenya, who was a druid and sorceress, left him at one of the Witcher headquarters after he was born. A pretty dark fate, since very few survive the trials that transform a boy into a Witcher. All females die in the process, but 3 out of 10 boys will make it out alive with a new body. Witchers were originally an attempt by mages at making knights more powerful for their kings in order to hunt down enemies and monsters. The outcome of the experiments weren't to their liking, so the kings and mages stopped. But the already created witchers continued this tradition of creating monster killers for hire as a sort of business. Visenya left Geralt at Kaer Morhen, a fortress in the large northern kingdom Cadwin. Kaer Morhen would be known as the School of the Wolf. Geralt survived the mutations he underwent here as a child to improve his senses and physical strength and speed. Next came the monster hunting lessons, where he was taught how to fight and use magic. Different Witcher schools have their own methods and teachings, however. Witcher fortresses are scattered throughout the northern kingdoms in remote places, and there are a lot of remote places in this map. There's the School of the Cat, School of the Griffin, and a lot more if you consider the events of the games to be canon. All along the eastern border are more mountains. There's the massive Blue Mountains, where more elves can still be found, and the just as massive Tir Toshare, where a community of gnomes have decided to gather and live together here. In between these two ranges is the Fiery Mountains. The only notable river on this map is the Aruga, the largest in the continent, starting from all these eastern mountains I just mentioned, flowing all the way through to the other side into the Great Sea. The mountainous region at the top of the map is the kingdom of Kovir and Povis. Even though they are part of the north, they decided to stay out of the war against Nilfgaard. Even further north of Kovir and Povis are the Dragon Mountains, and that's as far as this map goes. No one has crossed it to see what lies any further because of the threat of dragons. But there is some info on what lies further east, because there are some passes between the mountains, and no dragons here, folks. This area is referred to as the Eastern Realms, an exotic land nowhere near as populated as the north. There's the Korath Desert that some call the Frying Pan, a scorching hot environment with little water, so few bother exploring here. There's a ton more less notable kingdoms and locations scattered in the north, but I'll just add it on with text. This series is pretty expansive when it comes to lore and world building, so if you guys want more specific videos detailing interesting locations, I wouldn't mind diving deeper. I've probably spent more hours in Witcher 3 than any other game on my Xbox, so I can talk your ears off if you let me. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll see y'all soon. Thanks for watching.